Honourable Member for Athabasca Sturgeon Redwater.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. It's my great honor and privilege to rise today in the House to put myself on the record as being strongly in support of Bill 24 and Act to Support Gay Straight Alliances. I hesitate to lend my voice to that of my colleagues in the sense that I don't think I could possibly match the level of eloquence, the level of sagacity that I've and we've all had the privilege of hearing. However, particularly with my own roles as a rural person, as someone who grew up in a small rural community, as someone who's been involved in this issue since the mid-'80s, and as a teacher of law and ethics and education, I think that's maybe that those roles might have maybe a bit of relevance to this discussion. So it's in that spirit that I present my remarks. Just to echo comments of other members that talked about what it's like in our smaller communities. Where I grew up, there was the only discussion about these types of issues was as a way to discipline groups. It was a way to set the boundaries of what you belong to. So, I mean, if you were gay, you were outside the group. You weren't worthy of any sort of recognition. And all of us lived in terror of being branded that way. I mean, whether there were, gay or lesbian, or questioning, classmates that I grew up with. In fact, there were. I didn't find out about this until many years afterwards, and I know that I had a couple classmates that never gave a hint, and years later they came out, and how many years did they lose because of that? I mean, I suppose they were fortunate in that they had that opportunity. I mean, as the honourable member who just spoke, Edmonton, Elk Creek. We also we've also unfortunately had out of the blue suicides in our community that later on could be traced to just this total lack of communication and acceptance. And so I could say that I'm proud to be part of a government that's putting this bill forward. It's a sign of progress, but it's also a sign of how much progress we still need to make. That something like this is necessary. And I do want to take a bit of issue with the comments that the member from Calgary Mountain View made when talking about us politicizing this issue. This is not something that you can divorce from politics, and this is because the opposition to this bill is motivated by a political agenda. And I think that it's really important that we do understand that. And I think the honourable members across the aisle do understand that. And I think there's probably a growing discomfort in what the Faustian pact that they've made. The talking points that came out in opposition to Bill 24, the statement that was released by Mr. Kenney, are word for word from Parents for Choice in Education. Which has a particular agenda, and also very similar to the types of information put out by the Association for Reform Political Action. And when you understand those connections, is when you understand just how disingenuous the line is that we don't want to out gay children in opposing this bill. And the reason I say that is that if you look to the information that these groups put out, they do not accept any other form of sexuality besides that between a man and a woman for this, for the purposes of procreation, and that's where they're at. And so the reason that there's opposition to this is not an issue of parental rights so much as a very particular right that they're claiming, and that would be a right to be able to determine for their child what their sexuality is and how they express it. And like I said, as a former instructor in law and ethics of education, I've had the opportunity to look at the evolving role of the understanding of parental rights over history. And you have to go back a long ways to find similar types of claims to that level of parental authority. And really, you don't go within religious traditions. You have to go into Roman legal tradition and Roman, political tradition, and that would be the concept of paterfamilias. And paterfamilias was an old Roman concept, and it was that the father basically owned his family. He owned his wife, he owned his children, he owned his grandchildren. He had the power of life and death over them. He had the power to sell them into slavery if he so chose. There were some reforms of it later on where he'd only have that right 3 times. Right? But that's where that came from, and it was radical past the early Republic, and in fact, into the later Roman Empire, you had that moderated. And why is that? Because with the growing understanding of what it means to be ethical, there was an understanding that you cannot claim your child, you cannot claim your spouse, you cannot claim your grandchildren, you cannot claim another human being, period, as your property to be able to decide to do with what you will. And it's that evolving concept that's also influenced what the role is of the parent in education, and it's not an unlimited one. Even the United Nations Declaration of parental choice in education that the opposition is referring to is not unlimited, and it's justified based on ethical principles, and basically when that parental authority exceeds the ethical backing of that principle, it's no longer valid. And I think that parents, and there are only a few of them out there. I mean, the vast majority of parents, I think, are okay with this legislation, and I think this is true in rural areas as well. I mean, we've evolved a lot since the Michael Vrain case back in the mid-'80s. I think 1988 to be precise, when that came through. We've evolved a lot since when I was on campus back in the late 80s, when we'd have Blue Jeans Day to try to raise awareness of gay rights. And then we were talking about the right for gay people not to be fired for their sexual orientation, not to be evicted for their sexual orientation, where you had basically the entire business faculty make a point of not showing up in jeans, right? And what I'm making a point is that it hasn't been too many years ago that it was totally socially acceptable to totally deny these rights. And, but we've evolved. The majority of us have evolved, but unfortunately, there's still a minority that needs further education. And I think it's really unfortunate that you have people out there that are spreading misinformation and just crazy notions about what this means. I mean, I've been looking at blog postings, some by prominent former publishers, saying that these GSAs are in fact sex clubs and that we have to oppose them because they're going to be spreading venereal diseases. And they're talking about that this is what is going to happen to 10 and 11-year-olds who go in. That's really going quite a few steps back in the past, and it's unacceptable. And the thing is that I know that members across the House, that there are people that do have some real principles, and I just don't understand how they can feel comfortable in supporting this type of tactic. And so we do need to speak to what's underlying this. We do need to speak to politics of it, and it's because of this that we need to have legislation like this. And so. I think this is a good bill. Teachers support it. I think the majority is on our side. I think we have a moral obligation to put this through. There have been far too many children and youth that have suffered horribly, unnecessarily, because of why? Actually, it's a good question. Because of what exactly? Something that has been erroneous from the start. So. With that, I'd like to rest my remarks, and I do hope that in the end we can get unanimous support for this bill. Thank you.